Amazing discovery. How one black teen's kindness transformed a lost old woman's life forever. Malik Thompson stood in the fluorescent glow of the grocery store, his hands trembling slightly as he stocked the shelves with canned goods. The same routine day after day, a grind that weighed heavy on his shoulders. He was more than just a bright-eyed 16-year-old with rosy dreams of becoming a doctor. He was the backbone of his family, holding them together while darkness threatened the edges. The bills piled high at home, each one another reminder of overdue pressures and expectations. With a mother who worked 2 jobs and younger siblings counting on him, every moment seemed a balancing act. On that crisp afternoon, the door chimed as Mrs. Ruth, an elderly widow with gentle, lost eyes, wandered into the aisle. Life seemed to flicker around her, shadows of the past in those soft features. As Malik watched her, confusion etched deep into her brow. Something twisted inside him, an echo of his own grandmother's gentle advice to always pay attention to the lost and lonely. Should he approach her? What would he even say? Each thought stabbed at Malik's own struggle with identity and ambition. Was he strong enough for such a responsibility? Or was he too wrapped up in his own troubles? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Malik hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down. What if it took too long? What if his short reprieve disrupted his tasks and escalated the scrutiny from his boss or the annoyed customers? But then again, what if Mrs. Ruth needed him? She seemed so fragile, a porcelain doll set adrift in a world that had forgotten her. The internal pressure built self-doubt and the fear of judgment wrestling violently within him. Taking a deep breath, he finally approached her. "Excuse me, Mrs. Ruth? Can I help you find something?" he offered, trying to summon a bravery he didn't fully feel. Every word that followed felt like a chain connecting them. Each reply a fragile piece of a deeper connection intertwining their lives against the tumultuous backdrop of the store, a sanctuary away from their respective storms. But as they shared stories amidst the grocery aisles, Malik learned of the looming challenges in Mrs. Ruth's life, the knotted tension tightening in his chest like a vice. Hearing about her crumbling home, something ignited within him, a spark of determination flared, as he realized the economic struggles that bound them imperfectly together, hearts clinging to borrowed hope. Could his dreams of becoming a doctor extend beyond himself, beyond the walls of textbooks, into a community that needed fixing? As the days passed, Malik's focus sharpened, yet the cloud of skepticism loomed larger. Conversations turned tense with whispers of his intentions, ridicule sparking amongst those who underestimated him. He felt their eyes burning holes into him, and with every doubt they cast, he grappled with an increasing internal turmoil, fear of failure, fear of being rejected, fear of not being able to rise to the occasion. Mrs. Ruth believed in him, but how could he confront his own uncertainty when his heart sang for change? With the stakes rising, Malik found himself standing at a precipice, shadows lurking at the edge of his resolve. The very fabric of their connection was tested as he discovered a devastating truth. Significant figures in the community had plans that threatened to dismantle everything he worked for, everything Mrs. Ruth stood to lose. Would he have the courage to confront this new barrier? A storm brewed inside him as he wrestled, knowing full well that true kindness required him to fight not just for a lost old woman, but for everything that connected them in a world quick to look away. Desperation clawed at him as he faced the daunting questions ahead. Was he ready for a battle that felt so far beyond himself? Would action be enough? Or was he destined to watch the world unravel around him? As dawn cracked, a golden sheen spilled through Malik's bedroom window, illuminating crumpled notes and textbooks scattered across his desk. The gentle hum of the city awoke outside sirens, the chatter of early risers, and yet an unsettling storm brewed within him. Did he possess the strength to counter the looming threats against everything he had come to care for? The faces of his mother and siblings flashed in his mind, their hopes mirroring the flickering resolve in his chest. Determined to know his enemy better, Malik embarked on a mission. He researched those in power within his community, their interests, and emphasized their vulnerabilities. Each click on his laptop felt like a step into a maze dark and twisted. The weight of responsibility urged him forward, no longer a mere grocery clerk. He was now a protector of souls and the tranquility of the store that evening. While stacking shelves, Malik's mind drifted back to conversations with Mrs. Ruth. Her tales were threaded with lost friends gone, memories fading, and yet, buried in sorrow was a wisdom that flickered like a candle, urging him to aspire. He recalled the resilience in her voice, a fire against the dampness of despair. It was that very fire he now needed to kindle within himself. The whispers among his peers grew louder. Contemptuous remarks about his daydreams gnawed at his confidence, instilling a fear that perhaps he was overstepping, challenging forces far beyond his teenage grasp. Should he base his purpose on the petty judgments of others, or forge his own identity through conviction? That question hung like a specter as he prepared to confront reality. He decided to speak to Mrs. Ruth again. With each step towards her home, he felt as though he was crossing an invisible boundary, one that transitioned him from safety into vulnerability. The slanting sun cast long shadows as he approached her door, heart thrumming like a drum. Would she still believe in him as he laid out the plans he had crafted? His heart raced at the thought of her disappointment if she sensed his growing fear. Knocking lightly, Malik's eyes darted to the fading flowers in her front yard, testament to her lingering struggle. Mrs. Ruth appeared at the door, her eyes warming upon recognizing him, a beacon of light amidst his tempest of doubt. "Oh, Malik, come in," she beckoned, her voice tender, reinforcing the bond they had begun to create. As they sat with teacups warmed by stories, he steeled himself to share what knowledge he had unearthed. He spoke of the councilman, the shadows creeping into their neighborhood, and watched as her frown deepened a reflection of his own internal turmoil. "What can we do?" she finally asked, her voice tinged with regret but also determination, holding on to the idea that they could influence change amidst the chaos. Malik sensed the moment's gravity and unshackled his burdens. "We fight back," he declared, not a promise, but a commitment forged in fire, resonating beyond their individual hardships. Together, they crafted a plan. One built not just on facts and figures, but on heart. And the days that followed, a newfound energy enveloped Malik. He connected with others who shared their plight, their passions seeking allies against the invisible foe threatening to unravel their fragile world. Each conversation ignited a piece of him that he had buried under layers of doubt. As Malik stood at the crossroads between action and fear, he felt purpose pulse through him, deep-rooted and binding. But even as he inspired others, shadows of doubt began to morph into an overwhelming specter. Whispers still lingered, warning him of the dangers that lay ahead. It wasn't just about confronting the community's challenges anymore. His own self-doubt began to spiral, threatening to engulf the flame he had fueled from within. Could he truly lead this charge, or was he destined to falter at the crucial moment? The night deepened, and with it, Malik's resolve wavered, the choice hanging heavy in the air. Now, more than ever, he understood that action formed pathways in unexpected ways. It was time for a confrontation not just with the antagonists out there, but with the deepest fears within. The morning light sliced through Malik's curtains, brightening a room clouded with uncertainty. Today felt different. Instead of grasping a lingering fear, he held a flicker of determination in his hand. The voices of his peers echoed in his mind, but this time, he had fortified himself with an arsenal of conviction gleaned from fortifying conversations with Mrs. Ruth. He slid into his worn sneakers, feeling the friction of the battle ahead. The previous night had left him teetering on the edge of self-reflection. He couldn't simply mobilize the community. He first needed to stabilize his own resolve. The self-doubt that had once clutched at the edges of his consciousness could no longer remain unchecked. Breaking away from the glow of his desk, he paced the living room, his thoughts swirling in a tempest of strategy. What would he say to those who doubted him? He recalled the way Mrs. Ruth spoke of history's cyclical nature, how every revolution began with one voice, a single whisper that ignited the hearts of many. Malik needed to become that whisper, transforming the delicate flame of his message into a roaring blaze of resolve. His mind turned to the first ally he wanted to solidify. Ahmad, a neighbor and childhood friend he'd grown distant from as their lives charted different paths. Each school day, he passed Ahmad in the hall, their eyes meeting briefly but never lingering. Today, Malik couldn't afford the luxury of hesitation. He needed Ahmad's insight, courage, and experience, especially when it came to grappling with authority figures. Approaching Ahmad's front porch felt like walking toward a precipice. He felt vulnerable, something that made his stomach knot. Could Ahmad respect his newfound purpose? With a deep breath, he knocked firmly but quickly, not allowing his air of trepidation to seep through. Ahmad opened the door, surprise crossing his features before morphing into a cautious smile. "Malik, what's up?" His voice was warm, but Malik sensed an underlying apprehension as they exchanged greetings. "I need your help," Malik said. He stepped into the threshold, the sunlight washing over him as he laid out the framework of his plan, the neighborhood struggles, the hidden threats, and the people who were willing to listen. He could see Ahmad considering each word, his brow furrowing deeper with every point Malik made. "That sounds intense. Are you sure you can handle it?" Ahmad finally inquired, concern woven into his tone. The old ghosts of self-doubt surged forward, but Malik pushed back. "That's why I'm here. I can't do it alone. I need people who believe in this just as much as I do. I can't stand by anymore and watch. I want tea." Ahmad studied him, a decision dancing in his eyes. Malik felt the familiar thread of anxiety tightening in his chest. What if Ahmad turned him down? But in that moment, he saw a glimmer of something more, a shared understanding. "Okay, let us figure this out together," Ahmad finally replied, a sliver of trust breaking through their fractured connection. As they brainstormed strategies to rally those skeptical of Malik's leadership, an unexpected wave of exhilaration washed over him. Each plan energized a slumbering part of him, and he realized that addressing personal fears brought forth not only boldness but also camaraderie. But soon, that exhilaration turned into an undercurrent of restlessness. Malik could feel the weight of potential failure tightening around him like a vice, reminding him that every step forward could lead to a misstep, unfolding a deeper vulnerability. What if by reaching out, he had awakened an antagonistic force laying dormant in the shadows? What if Ahmad's skepticism were justified, and he failed to inspire belief in what could be done? As they wrapped up their conversation, Malik's mind raced with possibilities. Clutching the hope of changing things, he couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest battle lay ahead, not just with those who opposed them, but with the very fears he fought to overcome. The future loomed uncertain. Today was a new beginning, but deep down, Malik knew that it was only a stepping stone toward the moment he would have to confront the mounting obstacles both inside and outside. Would his voice resonate beyond the hollow echoes of doubt, and could he ultimately rise to meet the challenge before him? The clock ticked ominously in the background, an anchor of time reminding him that action was crucial. As he stepped away from Ahmad's home, an unsettling realization gripped him. The moment was drawing closer, where bravery and personal reckoning would intertwine. The time had come to face not just the community, but also himself. The urgency of Malik's thoughts echoed in his mind as he walked the familiar streets of the neighborhood, each step forcing the weight of his undertaking to settle deeper into his bones. The walls around him, once mere structures, now seemed like a reflection of his own obstacles. Each block held memories, the laughter shared with Ahmad, the arguments with teachers, the moments of solitude that had wrapped around him like a cloak of despair. But today was different. Today held a certain clarity. Just as he had felt apprehensive approaching Ahmad, Malik now felt an undeniable surge of purpose surging through him. His heart raced as he envisioned the dynamics of his plan playing out, each interaction a crucial link in a burgeoning chain of courage and determination. With renewed purpose, he realized he had to push these ideas further beyond just brainstorming with Ahmad. He paused before the community center, its once dull facade now resonating with potential. This was the epicenter of so many community conversations, yet Malik knew it had fallen prey to the very apathy he was determined to combat. As he stood there, a revelation washed over him. If he could capture a moment and experience that connected with people's hearts, he could ignite the very change he sought. Daydreaming turned into an instinctual leap as he entered the center. The air was thick with the scent of old vinyl and memories. The room was only half full. Faint echoes of laughter animated the corners, while others were lost in conversations layered with fatigue and skepticism. Boisterous dialogue contrasted sharply with Malik's inner tumult, as he sought the courage to step into the center of it all. "Hey, everyone," he called out, drawing glances from familiar faces. Some narrowed their eyes, unsure of this sudden voice breaking the monotony. He felt the weight of their stares, judging him, expecting him to falter. Yet, Malik harnessed the burn in his chest, grounding himself amidst the scrutiny. "Can I have your attention for a moment?" As he spoke, he became acutely aware of the bifurcation of self that existed within him, the Malik who had always retreated in moments of doubt, and the new Malik who was determined to rise. The room quieted as he harnessed his thoughts into coherent words. "I know things haven't been easy for many of us. I've seen how hard it can be to speak up, especially when it feels like no one is listening." He felt the pulse of their collective sentiment, deep and raw. "But I want to ask you all, don't you believe we can take charge of our own stories?" A ripple of surprise spread among the crowd. "For too long, we've waited for someone else to do it for us. But we can't wait anymore. We can take the reins, hold space for our voices, and transform our reality." Malik's conviction grew within him, fueled by the unease of the group. He began sharing personal anecdotes, reciting moments of hardship that they had all endured, his words weaving an invisible thread of unity among the room. As he articulated his fears and dreams, an unexpected thing happened. He saw glimmers of recognition in their eyes, people nodding and murmuring in agreement. It felt exhilarating, yet terrifying. Malik had ventured into uncharted waters, where vulnerability existed hand in hand with transparency. But this was no time for retreat. Today he was amplifying a truth he had spent too long suppressing. But just as he began to envision their imaginations igniting, whispers surged from the back of the room, carrying skepticism like an unwelcomed breeze. A voice, sharp and skeptical, sliced through the collective energy. "And what makes you think we should follow you? What have you done?" Malik's heart sank, his thoughts racing. This was the moment he had dreaded most. He had faced his fears to speak, but now he was challenged directly. Could he find the conviction to rise beyond the doubt threatening to engulf him? The room's air thickened as silence fell once more. Malik closed his eyes for a brief second, seeking the clarity that had first propelled him forward. Yes, this was his moment, not just to respond, but to confront not just external voices, but the louder one within himself. Wesley's challenge had cracked open a door, and Malik knew he had to step through it, exposing himself to the vulnerability that lay on the other side. The stakes had never been higher, and the next words he spoke could either shatter his newfound momentum or crystallize it into something greater. Filled with resolve and anticipation, he finally opened his eyes and met the crowd's gaze. "Because today isn't about who I am. It's about what we can become together." The silence simmered, and the brewing tension layered between them was palpable. Would his words resonate with the skeptical hearts surrounding him, or would they fold under the weight of expectation? In that moment, Malik stood at the precipice. There was no turning back. The challenge had been thrown down, and clarity blended with insecurity in a potent cocktail of fear and potential. Would he embrace the fight? Malik held his breath as the weight of his words hung in the air like a fragile thread. The eyes of the crowd bore into him, and he could feel the flicker of doubt creep back into his mind. He was no stranger to the feeling. It latched onto him like a shadow, always lurking just beneath the surface. But there was something different now. The words he had spoken were not just a declaration of collective aspiration. They were a promise, one he felt deep in his core. Wesley's challenge echoed in his mind. It wasn't merely a question about his past. It was a challenge to define his future. Malik had spent years waiting for an opportunity to assert himself, and here he was at a crucial crossroad. "Look, I know I haven't done anything grand," he said slowly, his voice growing in confidence. But it's not about what I've achieved. It's about what we can carve out together. Change doesn't start with a medal or a title. It starts with a belief in ourselves and in each other. With each passing moment, something in him began to solidify, an inner conviction taking form. He noticed a few nodding heads, a flicker of hope igniting in the somber faces. Malik leaned into that energy, pushing back against his own waves of self-doubt. What if I could help you share your stories? We can create a platform where we lift each other up. A space where our truths are not just heard, but acknowledged. His heart raced as he gestured expansively, envisioning the embodiment of that raw ambition. Countless tales lie buried beneath years of silence. He continued, his voice steadying. We can breathe life into that silence. Together, we can shape our narratives, not just as echoes of our past struggles, but as guiding lanterns for our futures. A spark of curiosity flickered in the audience's eyes, an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. Malik could feel it, the currents of potential swirling around them, weaving intricate paths of possibility through the dimly lit room. There is strength in each of you. You've experienced challenges that have molded who you are, just as I have. But it will take us working together to truly illuminate that strength. His words soaked in like sunlight at dawn, warming the previously icy atmosphere. But then he remembered, gratitude wasn't yet enough. Would they trust him to lead? Would Wesley accept his appeal for fairness? Drawing a deep breath, he took a step closer, tilting his head slightly in a gesture of humility. I am learning as I go, just like all of you. I don't have all the answers yet, but I want to explore them together. Silence once more enveloped the room, but this time it felt different, charged with a collective awakening. Malik sensed a softening. The edge in faces around him was giving way to curiosity and caution intermingled with something more profound, a flicker of aspiration. At that striking moment, Malik turned his gaze to several specific individuals, among them Wesley. If you're willing to join me, if you're willing to trust in us, I will pour every bit of myself into this. The atmosphere crackled, questions transformed into a quest for unity rather than division. Was this the start of a movement, of stories finding themselves woven together into a fabric of resilience and ambition? But as the palpable tension lingered in the air, he knew no true victory came without challenges yet to be faced. He could feel the energy in the crowd harden once again, doubts creeping back as more voices chimed in with disbelief. What if nothing changes? What if everyone remains silent just like before? This time, the skepticism was a chorus, echoing classically against the best-laid plans. Malik felt the urge to retreat, fear nudging him ceaselessly, but deep within, he understood something. The real test was not about leading them. It was about embracing his own fears in this transformative journey. Then we take it one step at a time, he replied, voice unwavering. We trust the process, even when it feels uncomfortable. As his words hung in the air, Malik stood anchored in that moment, a resolve illuminating the dark corners of uncertainty. Could he convert this budding trust into action? The risk loomed large, yet so did the potential for growth for himself and for those watching. And just as hope began to flicker, a voice from the back flashed like a dark cloud. What happens if we fail? Malik inhaled sharply as mounting questions loomed overhead, the stakes growing ever higher. The crowd was shifting beneath him, uncertain of the commitment he demanded. But just as doubts reigned, he felt a deeper part of him realize. The greatest failure would be to not even try. This was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead. Would he harness the courage to face a reality woven with fear and expectation, or would he let the moment slip away? Malik stood in the overwhelming din of uncertainty, each skeptical voice probing the tender places of his resolve. In the back of his mind, he felt the cold grip of fear tightening around him, like the squeezing of a vice. How could he ask them to take those first tentative steps when he himself stood on ground so shaky? And yet, the shift in the crowd sparked a flame within him, illuminating a path forward. He gazed across the room, searching for the faces he had initially locked eyes with. Each one reflected a silent narrative, tales of struggle, suppressed dreams, and the quiet hope that perhaps, just perhaps, someone would finally listen. He could feel their apprehension, their reluctance mingling with a hint of curiosity. The weight they carried was palpable, yet beneath it, he sensed an undercurrent of yearning. "Listen," he began again, forcing his voice to rise above the murmurs. "Failure is just another opportunity to learn, an opportunity that we can either embrace together or allow to paralyze us individually." As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift. There was a flicker of acknowledgement in Wesley's eyes, a question waiting to be articulated. "What if we do want to talk, but don't know where to begin?" Wesley finally asked, his voice breaking through the wall of doubt like a ray of sunlight. Malik paused, feeling the layers of his own uncertainty unravel. This was the crux of the dilemma. "Then let us start there," he replied cautiously but with increasing strength. "Let us create a space where stumbling through our words is part of how we grow. We can draft a plan together, map out these feelings that have been neglected for so long." A murmur rippled through the crowd. He could see the hesitant glimmers of inspiration sparking in their souls, but they still hovered on the edge of commitment. Would they truly rally together, or was this another false dawn? Another needless attempt at solidarity that would leave them empty again? Fear clawed at Malik's throat. This vulnerability, the honesty he attempted to offer, felt like a double-edged sword. One slip could lead to deeper disillusionment. He thought of previous encounters, his attempts at leadership, the lessons he had learned from moments of shame and fleeting success. What if this time he could harness those experiences? What if he could package his own fears into tools for others? He scanned the audience again, locking in on familiar faces. He would reach out to them, secure their support in his mission. "What if I led us in this, together?" he suggested, a newfound fire in his voice. "What if each of you shared just a single story, no matter how small? Imagine a series of moments pieced together like a mosaic. You'd be surprised at how your individual tales can contribute to a greater narrative." He watched closely as a few heads nodded in cautious agreement. Malik felt an unexpected surge of hope weaving through him. But that same presence of doubt lurked. A voice from the corner shook him. "What happens if no one listens? What if everything we say goes unheard?" Malik swallowed hard, the familiar taste of anxiety creeping back. What if he failed? What if they all drifted back into the shadows of silence? "Then we adjust," he said, working the words through clenched jaws. "We can become the echo that refuses to be silent. Together we can learn what it means to be truly heard." He sensed the energy ripple. The crowd was no longer entirely hostile. Some faces softened, reflecting a glimpse of what could be. Would he rally them into action or fall victim to the demons whispering defeat? With each passing second, a decision loomed larger in his mind, a leap of faith, forging a pact with both the crowd and his own inner doubts. Could he orchestrate a moment of authenticity, harnessing the courage to confront his fears while standing tall with them? With trepidation but unwavering determination, Malik spoke again. "I want you to be my foundation. Together, we can shape something worthwhile, something that won't dissolve like the breaths of doubt trying to suffocate us." The air vibrated with possibility, and Malik knew primal fears still lived in the corners of each heart surrounding him. But that fear was the catalyst for change, a trajectory into the unknown, where he would not only confront the question of his own potential, but carve out a path alongside those ready to walk. As the murmurs of uncertainty quieted, he realized he was standing at the brink of revealing his own truth. Would he accept the challenge of change? Would he dare to lead a journey where their collective voices could be amplified into a chorus of strength? And just as the room fell silent, a single question arose from the depths of that silence. But at what cost? A rapid heartbeat echoed within him as he pondered the implications of such a cost. Would he find the answer that could tip the balance toward redemption or scuttle the fragile trust they had begun to build? Malik took a deep breath, trying to anchor himself against the rising tide of uncertainty. His mind raced as the weight of the question hung heavy in the air. At what cost? The rustling of clothes, the murmurs of uncertainty. Every sound seemed to amplify his internal dialogue, replaying moments of failure and self-doubt that plagued him at each turn. There was no easy path forward, yet he felt the hearts in the room beginning to synchronize, pulses quickening with shared anxiety. I think, he started, his voice steady yet vulnerable. It's important to acknowledge this discomfort. He pointed to his own chest for emphasis. We're all feeling it. The fear of speaking our truths, the fear of being ignored, and the fear of failing not just as individuals but as a group. The truth of his words rippled through them. Malik watched as some faces contorted with uneasy recognition. He was articulating their unspoken fears, inviting them to step into the shared light of vulnerability. What if, he continued, we see this as an experiment? An exploration? We're not here to craft a perfect narrative that must be polished and rehearsed. We're here to unfold, to be raw and real. His words were met with a mix of nods and skeptical glances. Malik felt the pulse of hope swell, monochrome shadows of doubt giving way for a spectrum of potential. There was courage in this moment, the resolve to address the foundation they stood upon. It was shaky, yes, but the dirt beneath was rich and waiting, a source from which to grow. He recalled the conversations he'd had with mentors, who had taught him that growth often emanated from discomfort. Each struggle, each misstep echoed as lessons on the path to mastery. The costs will be different for each of us, he continued, parsing the thoughts that clashed within him. But every act of courage and vulnerability paves the way for not just our growth, but for those watching us take that leap. His gaze danced around the room, landing on faces that revealed the desire to connect. He could envision the stories bubbling beneath the surface, just waiting for the right moment to erupt. Could his insistence on honesty and openness forge an unexpected bond? A soft voice broke through. You mean it's okay to not have it all figured out? Yes. Malik replied, exhilaration spreading through him. That's the point. We're here to navigate together. Let us open those doors that lead to self-discovery. Our disparate fragments can come together to create something beautiful. His message reverberated, and for the first time he noticed a tangible shift. The walls of doubt were beginning to crack. And then, with a collective intake of breath, it happened. Several voices, one after the other, began sharing snippets of their experiences, anxiety about family expectations, a recurring feeling of inadequacy, instances of rejection that had shaped their beliefs. Malik encouraged them, emboldened by their spirit, weaving their stories into a tapestry of shared humanity. But just as the rhythm seemed to find its groove, a sharp sting of self-reproach nipped at him. Was he truly leading this journey or simply riding the wave, a false captain steering a leaking ship? What authority did he hold in offering advice? His own life felt like a jigsaw puzzle missing vital pieces. Again, the question loomed: what was at stake for him? Would he risk revealing his struggles if leadership demanded he bear more than just his courage? As he wrestled with this thought, he realized his mission was deeper than guiding others. It was an opportunity for him to confront his own insecurities head-on. Listen, he said, gathering his courage anew, as we step forward together, I'll share my own story as well. But let me confess, every part of me trembles at the thought of doing so. Silence enveloped the room. Malik knew that exposing his unpolished truth could either solidify their unity or unravel everything he'd attempted to weave together. As he prepared to reveal his vulnerability, he wished he could predict the outcome. But life was unpredictable, wasn't it? And, amidst the storm of emotions surging around them, he understood. Exposing fear could be liberating. Would they find strength in his radical honesty? Or would it shatter the tentative bond they'd begun to form? With bated breath, he braced for impact, his vulnerability stark against the backdrop of their collective uncertainty. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he uttered the words that could possibly redefine everything. What if I told you about the day that fear almost won? The silence weighed down like heavy fog, and he held his breath, awaiting their response. Malik's heart raced, the stillness stretching into a near unbearable tension. He could almost hear the gears turning in each mind around him, wondering what kind of story could prompt such a declaration. Would they understand his struggles? Would their perceptions of him, of their leader, shift uncomfortably? But as he prepared to unravel his truth, another voice chimed in, a male voice, heavy with skepticism. What's the point of dragging up old fears? We're here to move forward, not wallow in the past. Malik had anticipated pushback, but the words stung nonetheless. He almost backed down, instinctively wanting to retreat into a safer silence. He had spent countless hours questioning his own journey, dissecting it piece by piece, re-examining every failure, the days of dismissing his potential, of believing he could excel just because of his talent for mimicking how others succeeded. He was all too familiar with the prison of self-doubt. Yet, somehow, he summoned a firm response, strengthened by the warmth of shared vulnerability radiating from those around him. That fear shaped me, he articulated, his own doubts momentarily silenced in the rhythmic cadence of his words. Denying the past doesn't free us. It merely shackles us to misunderstandings. I stood at the edge once, nearly letting fear dictate my fate. I can't promise that discussing it will solve our collective problems, but I can promise it will bring us closer to understanding ourselves and each other. With that declaration, he journeyed deep into the threshold of his memory. He recalled the damp summer day, the sun behind clouds, casting soft shadows. He had just graduated high school, filled with dreams that felt both distant and impossibly close. The exhilaration hung palpably in the air, but during that summer, he faced an unwavering hurricane of expectations. As he relayed his experience, how he had failed his first job interview due to an internal panic that drowned out his preparatory insights, Malik observed faces shift from skepticism to compassion. Each revelation loosened the embedded knots of fear. He spoke about the grinding weight of expectations that felt heavier when compounded with a sense of inadequacy. He remembered walking home, lost in thoughts about how he had let everyone down. His pulse had quickened when he stumbled upon an elderly woman on the sidewalk who had dropped her groceries. In that moment, he faced a choice: continue on the path of despair or reach out and help. He wrestled with his own inner fear while knowing she'd likely cherish even the simplest act of kindness. I chose to act, he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability spilling from his heart. That woman's gratitude changed me more than I could have ever anticipated. It was the first moment I realized how small acts can create ripples of impact, not just in others, but in ourselves too. I had let fear almost rob me of that life-altering moment. As he concluded, he sensed the weight of recognition settling in the room. Each of them connected with his narrative, others sharing hesitant murmurs of agreement, of empathy. A sense of unity began to envelop them, forging a bond more profound than he could have imagined. But even while feeling the connection deepen, inner turmoil lingered. Malik wrestled with the thought that perhaps the shared awakening would leave him nakedly exposed at the end of it all. What if it wasn't enough? What if his failed attempts at connection drove them away instead of bringing them closer? No matter what happens, I have to stand up again, he told himself fiercely, aware that vulnerability was not weakness but a courageous exploration into authenticity, even if it carried risk. As the room transitioned from silent contemplation to a buzz of emerging dialogues, Malik felt an electric charge. He had tasted the bitter and sweet of his own discovery, but it was imperative now to find a way forward that reflected true growth. Could he shape that journey into something that mattered, a commitment not simply to shared stories, but to continuous growth? The stakes were high, but the truth was clear. He needed to step beyond the shadows of past fears, even as he gazed into the uncertainty of what awaited. Yet another question loomed: what would happen when the masks were gone? Let us continue to unravel and discover together, he invited softly, eagerness bubbling beneath the surface. The gravity of the next step flooded him with both excitement and fear. He knew they were heading into uncharted territory. What lies beyond our fears? The room stilled as anticipation hung in the air, and Malik couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change irrevocably. The din of the room transformed into whispers, each person grappling with the notion of vulnerability that Malik had introduced. As eyes darted around, Malik sensed a swell of curiosity mingled with introspection. He had just peeled back the layers of his own insecurities. Now, the collective weight of their shared silence bore the momentum of a pivotal breakthrough. But rather than resting in the comfort of this moment, Malik felt a stirring deep within him, an urgent need to strike. While the emotional iron was hot in a sudden shift, he felt the threads of his narrative hitching towards a new direction. I shared my fear of failure, but I want you all to consider this. Fear isn't the only thing that shapes our stories. What if our failures also offer us hidden strengths? He noticed a shift in the room, a heightened anticipation, a curiosity about what he might unveil next. With care, he laid out a challenge. Instead of viewing our past failures as shackles, perhaps we could see them as the foundation for the extraordinary. The idea hung in the air, morphing into a tangible possibility. Malik's instincts urged him forward. The memories of his failed interview, the crushing weight of disappointment, morphed from personal grief to collective insight. What if we could re-envision our past experiences? He continued enthusiastically. Like talismans, our struggles possess a kind of hidden potential. As he spoke, he visualized their expressions begin to shift from mundane curiosity to thoughtful consideration. A young woman in the back of the room raised her hand. Are you saying our failures can empower us? Even those moments that made us feel not enough? Her voice trembled, but determination illuminated her question. Absolutely, Malik affirmed, excitement rippling through him. Failures push us to rethink, to adapt, to cultivate resilience. They teach us valuable lessons I believe are essential to our growth. What if we documented these lessons as a source of strength, not shame? A murmur of agreement rolled through the crowd, igniting a spark of hope. As conversations burgeoned around the room, Malik felt an irreversible change within himself. No longer bound by the heavy expectations of earlier days, he embraced the idea that transformation was a collective endeavor, an ongoing dialogue that demanded authenticity. What if his risk was simply the first domino in a chain reaction? The notion invigorated him. He envisioned workshops where they could each share their failures and, more crucially, how they overcame them. This could be a space for empowerment, a sanctuary for growth. The previous unease now morphed into determination, a newfound shared purpose. Let us create a space where we can explore these failures and discover our capabilities together, he suggested, eyes alight with enthusiasm. When we uncover the strength in vulnerability, we cultivate not just connection, but growth. We'll call it Exploration Fridays, where we share experiences and articulate lessons learned. As he spoke, Malik could see the flickers of excitement spreading. While uncertain, he felt a surge of confidence. This idea was a bridge from self-reflection to action. He could be a catalyst for change, but it was contingent upon their willingness to leap into the unknown. Yet as he laid out the framework, a sliver of doubt crept back in. What if they didn't embrace the initiative? What if he was misreading their interest? An internal dialogue battled against the rising tide of optimism. In that moment, Malik took a breath, silencing the spiraling fears that threatened to undo all he had built up. It would not be the fears but the pursuit of connection that defined his leadership. Are you with me? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Will we explore together? The room inhaled sharply, the palpable silence laden with tension. All eyes were locked on him, searching, weighing the sincerity of his offer, contemplating the transformative potential that lay within their collective experiences. The tension washed over him like a tide, ebbing and flowing until it found his heart racing in tandem with theirs. Malik felt a weight lift, intermingled with uncertainty. He had presented a vision, but now it was time for the group to respond. As the first murmurs of affirmation echoed throughout the space, Malik realized he was on the edge of a defining moment, not just for them collectively, but for himself. He understood that embarking on this path would require courage, commitment, and relentless honesty. And in that electrifying cusp of discovery, he sensed a shifting reality. Behind this initiative lay not just potential for personal growth, but also a challenge to redefine the relationships they had cultivated. How would they respond when faced with what lay beneath the surface? Would they support one another in exposing their raw truths? The answers were yet to unravel, but one thing felt irrefutable: their journey had only just begun. Each step deeper into vulnerability beckoned him forward, to explore all that this brave new venture held. But amid the hope and possibility, a shadow lingered. What if some fears were better left unexamined? What if, for some members, exposing those truths led to unforeseen consequences? As Malik's heart beat with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, he knew that this was only the prelude to a much larger confrontation with the very essence of their shared humanity. Malik Thompson stood tall under the bright fluorescent lights of the community center. The air buzzed with a mixture of excitement and skepticism, but most importantly, it radiated with possibility. The initial waves of doubt that had weighed him down were starting to lift. As he prepared to unveil his vision of Exploration Fridays, he realized he wasn't just stepping forward as a leader. He was emerging as an advocate for change both for himself and for others. Today marks a new beginning for all of us, he declared, voice steady with resolve. We're not just here to recount what holds us back, but to build a roadmap towards who we want to become. Each word resonated, breaking through the remaining obstacles in the room. Malik understood that true leadership was not just about occupying a title. It was about creating a space where voices were amplified and stories shared. As participants began discussing their experiences and lessons learned, Malik noticed the transformation unfolding. From initial skepticism to a shared commitment, they were learning not only to articulate their fears but to embrace them as growth opportunities. This collective storytelling painted a vivid tapestry of resilience that Malik had envisioned. He felt deeply satisfied watching their courage bloom as they supported each other in the realm of honesty. Reflecting on the profound connections that had been forged, Malik recognized a pivotal truth. His journey was intertwined with those around him. Their narratives were not isolated relics of past burdens. They were vibrant descriptions of their interconnected growth, fostering a rich sense of community related to shared struggles. The first Exploration Friday was a resounding success, igniting a steady stream of participants eager to join in. The faces that had once mirrored skepticism now sparkled with realization many had felt unheard for far too long. Together, they were rewriting their present narratives, transforming fears into strategies for success. Malik had created a dialogue that mattered, and in doing so, he experienced the real power of his earlier vulnerability: mutual recognition. Days passed, and so did challenges, but each one became another opportunity for Malik to demonstrate his ability to adapt and overcome. His leadership was no longer marked by doubts but defined by newfound confidence. He navigated through practical considerations, ensuring that participants could access the support they desired, solidifying his role as an influential figure in the community. Then came the day he received a call from the local youth council. They had heard about the initiative, its impact rippling through the community, attracting attention and support. They offered him a chance to speak at a regional conference that showcased youth-driven change. Malik hesitated, the old voices of doubt whispering reminders of his place. But this time, they were distant echoes, overshadowed by the vibrant call of possibility and recognition. On the day of the conference, Malik stood before an audience of eager faces. His heart raced not with trepidation but with excitement. He had conquered the storm within himself, the narrative that had once boxed him in. Now, he found strength in vulnerability and determination, expanding his vision beyond individual problems into larger social challenges. This isn't just about me, he began, reaching out to connect with his audience. It's about each and every person who has felt silenced. Together, we can redefine our reality. The applause that followed didn't just confirm success. It recognized the transformation that had unfolded. Malik had woven his personal journey of kindness, courage, and connection into a narrative that resonated deeply with others. Embracing both fear and hope, he accomplished far more than he had initially set out to achieve. In that moment, he truly understood. Growth wasn't a solitary endeavor. It was the product of collaboration and shared vision, the product of a community raised to rise together. Malik departed from the conference not just as a participant but now as a recognized leader, armed with experiences that shaped not only his future but also the futures of those he inspired. In his heart, he smiled, knowing he had transformed into a person he could respect and trust. The boy who once stood uncertain now held his head high, fully embracing his dreams. His journey was far from over, but he was well on his way, each step echoing with purpose. Now is the time for you to be part of stories that inspire trust and change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will fuel your ambition. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping spread these powerful tales. Comment your reactions and theories about Malik's inspiring journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the light of inspiration.